Audio Content Lab.
In a world filled with forgettable marketing and futuristic technology to deliver it to us, we can experience a type of amnesia for the era of mass media and jingles. We can all admit to having a commercial earworm burrowed into our brains from our childhood, but when it comes to making advertising that leaves a memorable impression today, we are oddly left scratching our heads. But what if the way to getting an ad recalled works off seemingly old-school pathways? What if the key to getting an ad seen and remembered is by making sure it's heard? Today on the show, we talk with our co-worker, musician/marketer Anthony Henderson about what good ads sound like and ways marketers can use this information to make more effective campaigns. Let's roll.
It sounds like
marketing.
It sounds like marketing.
Welcome to Sounds Like Marketing, the audio content marketing podcast that's here to dial businesses and brands into the importance of sound. I'm Jake Sanders. I'm a Taurus. I'm joined by Paul Julius, who is, what are you? You give me Sagittarius vibes. Is that true?
I'm a Stegosaurus.
Okay, I can't. We need to take a look at the zodiac map again, but I think that's the sign with the plated armor on its...
Yeah.
That's
I'm
so cool.
I'm open to new things.
You're in retrograde right now, and I'm pretty sure
my sign's in Gatorade. Anyway,
I'm deep in Uranus. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean.
That's
to
what
say.
the armor plates are to defend against.
I'll give you a couple
but
drinks.
I have a problem with that. I'm just saying.
No. I want people to do what they have to do.
It's all open to interpretation, I think, Anyway,
well, we're really excited about this episode. We get to talk to our co-worker here at Audio Content Lab, Anthony Henderson, about what a good ad sounds like. Yes. And we found a really cool hot take to start the show off with. Paul, why don't you intro this and then give us your thoughts?
Yeah. All right. So this is from audiosocket.com. It's called 5 award-winning ads that masterfully combine sound and image. And Jake found this, so props to you because It's really good. Everyone should check it out. But it goes like this. Music's role in advertising spots is as essential as breathing. We don't always notice it as it's happening, but we definitely miss it when it's gone. So music that's out of sync with its accompanying imagery can feel as stressful and uncertain as hyperventilation.
Well, I think you're being a little bit dramatic, but okay.
Hey, that's what they wrote.
No, I know.
And they go on to say, and in some cases, omitting the music, just like holding one's breath, can be done to great effect, but only when used deliberately and sparingly. And I agree. I love this.
Yeah.
Athletes and dancers thrive on coordinating breath with movement, and advertising thrives on coordinating music with images. Here, we analyze 5 award-winning spots that use a combination of sound and vision to create the greatest artistic effect. So, I like that. A little. I think they're going a little bit over the top, but I'm a big fan of empty space, and I think you and I have talked about this a lot.
Oh yeah, that's part of the sonic palette. Yeah, silent.
Well, and that actually that's what I got out of this article. So there's 5 different things in here, and they all link to the different ads and stuff. But the one that I liked is the Nike ad for breaking. It's called Breaking 2. And they're basically trying to. It's for breaking 2 hours in a marathon, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think this ad is a really excellent example of not just matching the right music to the images, but also how to really kind of construct that background and that soundtrack of an ad, so it has an impact, like a story.
Right.
And if you go and listen to it, it starts with like just the background sounds, like there's just wind, and then a voiceover comes up, and then the music comes up underneath the voiceover, and it keeps going. And it builds and builds and builds, and then it fades out to just one note where it says "Just Do It," and then the Nike logo, and then we're out.
Quality.
And it's like, it might seem formulaic, but I want people to try this, right? Watch it with the sound off, so you just see the images, and realize too. I think this is an important note. A lot of people watch ads with the sound off, so images are. I'm not saying sound is everything. You got to have something there.
Good point.
But do that and now go to something like Premium Beat, premiumbeat.com. They have like royalty-free music or anything like that, where you can grab samples of stuff that you could use to make an ad and try doing some different tracks to it. Like
Cool.
and you can kind of see like, and we've talked about this before. Like you could, play like yakety sax or banjo music, and make it funny. Or you can make it like a doomed. You could totally change the character of this thing and just be like, make it doomed. Like no one's ever gonna break it. Have some really slow contemplative piano music.
Right.
You can really kind of reframe things and change the impact or decrease the impact.
Wow.
Just by changing the music or the fade in or the fade out of the voiceover, or like they say, no voiceover, no sound.
Right.
And this can really make a huge difference because realize you have 30 seconds, maybe a minute,
Right.
And so to me, like, I think that's the thing that really strikes me is like your palette is empty, is nothing.
Mhm.
And everything that you put in is going to either complement or detract from what it is. And that's really kind of what I think. But what do you think, man?
Yeah, man. Well, and so you picked a great example, and I love that experiment that you can run by switching out the soundtracks. It's wild how we don't really consider it. And I do appreciate the way they started this article by linking it to breathing. You don't notice it until it's gone. And, in our previous episode with Dr. Nina Kraus, she was talking about how you feel when sounds go away. Like you have this release. And then my example that I picked from this was the 7-minute spot from the National Suicide Prevention organization. And it was just, it's unreal. It's a 7-minute spot. So, Paul's talking about like a regular ad. You maybe have 60 minutes, 30. Yeah. I mean, sorry. You maybe
seconds,
you maybe have 60 seconds or 30 seconds. But this is a 7-minute spot. And it starts in the same way. It's very like it comes out of nowhere and you hear this person humming a song, and then you see that they're singing to a baby, and then you realize it's Don Cheadle. Like these have like A-list actors here. Matthew Modine, Luis Guzman is in this, and it's all underscored by an amazing song by Alicia. I hope I'm saying that right. Alicia Cara and Khalid, who's rapping on it. But there's such, like really rich, dark strings get in there, and then there's a motivating beat, and then there's this very profound lyrics, that are talking about what it feels like to not want to be alive. Like, wow, I'm getting goosebumps just even talking about it. And so it made me think, this is basically a montage. You see montages in the 80s movies where they're studying, and they really condense a lot of time into a small spot. And I was wondering, how do montages work? Like, what makes them compelling? And it really does come down to this music that's underscoring it. So it helps carry these kind of big leaps in time and just stitches them together. But I clicked through a couple different places. I found this article on the Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare website, and it was how music affects your mind, mood, and body. And they mentioned something called the ISO principle effect. And I had never heard of this. And so I clicked through to the medical journal where they have the study. They basically are positioning music as this medical treatment, like legit, like it helps change people's mood. So if they have affective disorders or depression or something, that's the ISO principle effect at work. And so this quote merits me retelling it. The ISO principle suggests that listening to music which matches the current mood first picks... Oh, wow. What the fuck? Which matches the current mood first picks individuals up where they are. So it warrants me retelling it right now. The ISO principle suggests that listening to music which matches the current mood first picks individuals up where they are. Listening to music with a different and desired valence, which is sort of emotional state, afterwards helps them to shift to a desired perspective and experience. So for our intents and purposes, there is medical research that states the reality of how music is maybe the most powerful way to tell stories, impart feelings, and engage and transform an audience. So, whether that's a montage or an ad or a music video, I mean, getting the sound right for any storytelling vehicle is table stakes. It's actually like medical scientific proof that this is something that needs to be considered ahead of time. And, and also one of the things that they mentioned in this is that the ad boosted traffic to the website, the suicide prevention website, to its second highest total ever. So that's proof that ads that bring an audience in through music can be powerful ways to impart messages and drive desired behaviors. But the thing that's most interesting is when we talk to Anthony is music is the last thing people think about in content creation. It's the absolute last thing. In all the movie scores I've ever done, it was right at the end. And I understand you need to have all the edits in, you need to know how the flow works, but then the music's put on top. And it's like these examples of award-winning ads that, match music and images. It makes it seem like they thought about the sound first. The way that Nike ad starts with just like random sounds and you're kind of grasping for sense, like sense making. What does this mean? And then the way the suicide prevention spot starts, it's this very light, soft humming. And you're not sure who's doing it, but then you see it's a baby and a dad, and then you're off to the races. You're already engaging. You're already trying to understand what's going on. And, it's just something that people need to consider ahead of time, And I just don't think they do.
Well, and I like too what you say, what you found in your research, where there's kind of two parts, and the first part is kind of lifting, like let's get on board. And I think the ads that we both kind of picked out do that. Like, okay, we're gonna pick you up, and you're coming along for this ride.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it just gets you right into it. There's no abrupt shift. You don't have to, there's no, like, they don't use shock value or anything like that. I think it's very, very clever and they're both very cognizant, I think, of that principle that you talked about.
Right. And we get into all this stuff and in specific how they work, how these musical, emotional, valence changing, transformative things work in advertising. And we bring up examples of jingles, that live free in your head for 30 years. Some of those montages that I watched in those movies as a kid, in the 80s, those are still in my head whenever I'm training, whenever I'm at the gym, I'm hearing the Rocky theme song,
You and Mr. Miyagi. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Power of Love by Peter Cetera. Bro, I'm going hard on that. But this is a great hot take that trampolines us into a wonderful interview with Anthony Henderson, who has decades of experience making music, delivering emotions to audiences, and he's taken that in a new direction with his work in mobile game advertising, sonic branding, all that stuff. So we get into it, and you're going to get into it, and there's no choice. So get in, losers. We're going. With 15 years background in sales and marketing and just as many years experience playing live music, Ant Henderson knows the impact spot-on audio branding can have in all venues of life. As one of the mad scientists here at Audio Content Lab, Ant brings a finely tuned ear and a smorgasbord of technical know-how to the team and excels at creating and connecting the sounds of a brand to the visual messaging in creative and powerful ways. He's joined us to answer the question, what does a good ad sound like? Ant, welcome to the show.
Good evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you happen to be.
Yes, it's very fungible. Time is now fungible. We appreciate you carving out some time to talk to us. So let's start in a biographical manner. Talk about your path from music to sales to sound to now your current position as Sonic Mad Scientist.
Okay, so what, musician for 25 years, but probably extend that even further back to my kind of brass playing days when I was a kid. So started off as a trumpeter, played trombone, played concert band stuff up until my late teens when I picked up a bass guitar and cast my trombone aside.
Yeah.
And I've never picked one up since, and I really want to buy one again and play that. So yeah, played in bands for years, in the shadows, holding down the low end as a bass player, and started my sales career, yeah, probably like 15 years ago. I've sold everything from kitchens through to gas and uninterruptible power supply buildings for gas pipelines in Egypt. And now I live in the kind of FMCG, CPG world, but kind of mostly within like vitamins, mineral supplements, which I've been doing for the last 10 or so years.
Yeah.
But I was B2B for a lot of years, construction products, construction hire, that sort of stuff. And as a salesperson and part of the sales team, being one of those sales bros, God, it makes my stomach churn. Like, it was kind of like, we are sales and we cannot. I've just thrown my phone across the room. Let's do an edit there. Do an edit. Yeah, like part of the sales team is like, we are sales and you are marketing and never the twain shall meet.
Right.
And there was never an understanding of what marketing actually did. It really was that like horrible cliche of the coloring in department.
Right.
And it was only when I moved and I got kind of like my dream gig of moving to a brand that I really loved, because they were like within a realm that I was part of and doing a lot of sport and exercise and stuff. And I realized there was this huge disconnect between sales, marketing, and brand. And then it was from like that point on that I kind of jumped headfirst into actually getting my head around branding, marketing, how it dovetails with sales, and how the two actually should be pretty damn harmonious and not conflicting and against each other.
Right.
And that's still a thing the world over, particularly in B2B, not so much in B2C, but or in brand stuff, but yeah, definitely in B2B world.
Yeah. And then, so how did you pivot into composition and finding like this niche here? Like, you took your previous skills as a musician, but a lot of people don't, they like to perform, but they might not necessarily enjoy the songwriting process. Like, how did you get into that?
In all honesty, I was never a songwriter at all. Arguably I'm still not a songwriter. If you told me to pen a song, it would take me a year to write something. But it was the first lockdown. It was COVID. I don't know how many people can tell this story of, the COVID came along and I was stuck in my house and I needed something to do. Right. And I'd actually dropped away from music for the best part of about 10 years for one thing or another. So I just fired up my laptop and I was like, let's see what electronic music's all about. Like, I've never done that. So just started mashing some beats together, traded up, got some new software, bought way too many virtual instruments and fell down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Endless rabbit hole right there.
Absolutely. And then it's kind of over time, just like spent time reading and learning, and then fell into the kind of library music come trailer world, which is its own thing entirely that I knew nothing about. And then, for the last 2 years, I've just kind of delved further and further, met some awesome people, asked a lot of questions, and just refined my skills over and over. And I found a wonderful connection between people, like yourself included, Jake, from the kind of Twitter sphere and that crew of people that came together during that time within ad agency, marketing, brand. And I just soaked all of this in and then applied kind of, well, hold on, there's some really cool sonic stuff that can be done here. And jump down 1,000 more rabbit holes around digital audio ads, around sound design, sonic branding, and everything associated.
Hell yeah. I can relate to that because I did when my kids were young. I kind of stopped playing for like about 10 years too. But I think there's something to that. Like it's almost like you never like it just kind of marinates somewhere in your brain. It's like it doesn't go away.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you think, with all that experience and everything you've been doing now, like I've seen some of the stuff you've done on LinkedIn, like some of the remixes and spec work and some of the stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
it's really amazing how you kind of, I think you bring a larger sense and a different perspective to some of the work that's there now. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
curious, like, what do you think? Like, how do you think a good ad should use sound?
Do you know what? You guys were very kind to send me the questions over beforehand, and the first two words I wrote is every marketer or ad person's words, and it was that depends.
Yep.
And it really does, because it like there's so much that goes into the thought, and the main thing in terms of like an audio ad, so whether that be radio or digital audio, so whether it's on SoundCloud, Spotify, whatever you, is that they're two completely different listening experiences. So if you take radio, for instance, a radio is often, I should say, on in a car, in an office, in a warehouse, in a gym, wherever that radio is going, and it's big and it's loud and it's bold. Where a digital audio ad, I don't have the numbers, but like I know me personally, when I'm listening to digital audio, I will almost always have headphones in. So it's a lot
Right.
closer, a lot more kind of personal connection to the person that is listening. So you then have to kind of be sympathetic to that listening position and going, right, if I treat this like a radio ad, I'm going to blow somebody's head off.
Right.
And, or vice versa. If I treat this like a digital audio ad and then just whack that on the radio, it's never going to cut through. It's never going to grab attention.
Mm.
So that's certainly the first thing that I'm thinking about. And then I'm very much trying to pull through like everything about the brand, everything that has been created before, whether it's visual, tone of voice, typography, everything about what's been done before, and taking everything that somebody usually sees, but then feeding it into somebody's ears.
Mm.
And it's sometimes a blessing and a curse, because like the way I see it is, if somebody gets served a video, you're trying to command two mediums. You're trying to command their eyes and their ears, and one can be more distracting from the other. Wherewith, when you've just got audio, that's all you have to focus on. So it's like, how do I immediately grab that person's attention to get them to listen, to get them engaged? And you have such a very short time, but you have so many little nuanced ways that you can do it, that are like way more intimate and way more beneficial than doing something visually.
Mm. You
Well, I
you
think too.
Yeah, go ahead,
Go
brother.
ahead. Oh,
No.
all right. I just wanted to, we've talked about it before, Jake and I, about like watching a commercial, and the commercial isn't the same as like a movie, right? Because they don't put every single little sound in. You don't hear all the doors close. You don't hear
Mm.
footsteps, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But that's still communicated. So I think that's really interesting that, you obviously don't have to draw as much of a picture, um, if you're using video and stuff like that. But I think that's a really interesting point. I don't know, Jake, if you want to hop in on that too, about big versus small, headphones versus speakers. I
Mhm.
think there's something there. Like that's really important.
But you talk like that visual, like movies and TV. Just think of the difference between movies and trailers. Like big movies get a trailer cut, and that trailer cut will be cut entirely different to that movie in terms of the sounds that it uses. More often than not, it's pulled a load of library music, but it's big, it's bold, it's brash, it's Brahms, it's big hits, it's everything to get you engaged in that 90 seconds to get you to go to a movie theater or stream it at home.
It's amazing because you're talking about the palette, like the sonic palette, and then understanding where it's going to be engaged with and what it has to get done. Like
Mhm.
the brief, like what's the call to action, for a trailer versus the call to action for a movie is just sitting there
Yeah,
and
totally.
watching it. And I think you're something that most marketers are not considering is maybe this comes from your fast moving, packaged goods thing, is like you're on a shelf compared to other people, and you need to find a way to stand out and make a connection. And I think a lot of marketers are happy with something that they've created, and they're waiting for people to like respect the genius and the subtlety of things. And then I think your sales experience is like, yo, people need to ring this phone, so
Yeah,
you
exactly. I'm just
have
going to go and smash that door down and knock and knock and knock until you answer and give me the time of day.
well, and I think that tenacity is missing from marketing practitioners, because they're thinking that the beauty is in the creation, and then maybe they'll distribute something, but you're very cognizant about how it's being compared on a shelf, mental shelf space. And I think there's something powerful that marketers could learn, is the sales bottom line, but then also the aesthetics of sticking out are kind of in tandem. And there's something that you do with the spec work and the compositions that you've shared, thus far, and some of the client work that we're doing, that respects the holistic marketing aspect of things, but also, is cognizant of sales. It's like, hey, we got to move this. And that's interesting that you talk about trailers. You in previous conversations, you've talked about getting involved in a Discord chat with trailer composers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a way you can talk about things that you've learned, both as a marketer and a composer, about how sonic branding is applied, to trailers, but, specifically the things that you've been, discussing and learning about in your Discord?
Yeah, sure. It's a majority gaming composers, actually. Shout out to Matt Harnage, who set that group up. Like, the main thing about that group is that it is what I would describe as like the safest space on the internet that I've ever found to, like, I'm just going to share my stuff, and somebody will rip it to shreds, but kindly. And everybody there is literally people there from one end of the spectrum to the other. So you've got guys and girls, people that have worked AAA game development houses doing sound design, doing music compositions on some of the biggest games in the world, through to people working with independent developers doing their smaller stuff, and even people doing their own thing. There's a few people in there making their own games, doing all the development, doing all the coding, doing all the music, doing all the sound design. So it's like just this huge cauldron of talent. So the main thing in there has just been like soaking up everybody else's influences. Like, there's stuff in there that I would never have touched. There's games that I never would have played, and genres that I just have never been me, but I've managed to learn so much from them in terms of musicality, theory, applying what they do from an implementation point of view, which is something that I am certainly not an expert on in the slightest from a gaming point of view. But that's a whole other topic in itself.
Right.
So, there's just, I think when it comes to audio, and most people that work in media, particularly like visual media, gaming, that side of things, unless you are one of the top composers or one of the top sound designers, like, audio gets short shrift. It's the thing that's bolted on at the end. It's the thing that somebody goes, oh crap, we've forgotten about all of this that we need. Right. Quick, somebody drag some budget from somewhere to get this made. and I hear it the world over, film, movies, TV, the whole lot. These people are like, they're carving out this niche for themselves, and they're doing such a good job. But sound brings so much to the visual. People go out and taking this back to kind of thinking about marketers and the way marketing and comms has happened over the last few years. Like, we're all about Instagram and TikTok and social media and making video. First it was like stills, and then it was videos, and then it was reels, and now it's TikToks, and everybody's about the visual. And very, very few people think about their audio presence in the stuff that they're making. So, it's only recently that you started seeing people like picking up like the Rode clip-on, like Lavalier style mics and that sort of stuff. So people are starting to now think, oh, well, I'm making these videos for YouTube. I'm making this, I'm making that. I should probably make it sound good. And finally, thank you, because I have sat through God knows how many hundreds and thousands of hours wincing at what could have been a great video. But because it sounded like somebody had recorded it in their bathroom, it was a really displeasurable experience. And people forget about that.
Yeah, well, you remember the bad stuff. It's funny talking about the games, though. I think you make a really good point that, like, it really is a lot of time, and I think in ads too, the sound is an afterthought. But I was thinking of the games, the sounds that I remember, like Halo. I remember all of that music, and freaking they got Steve Vai to play the guitar. It sounds incredible. But the point is, everything else is at a much lower bar. So I think a lot of times, if you're just a little more cognizant and aware and like thoughtful about what you're doing, you're ahead of the crowd already.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many trade-offs to have in that world. Obviously you kind of fighting for space. You only got a certain amount of space that you can fit into a game. So then it's like, well, how do I make this? But like immersive audio is something that one day I would love to get into, but I've got enough to do already. And that's a whole thing on its own. And there are people out there doing really great work with immersive audio. And I think it's getting more and more, like, for instance, Grammy nominations and that sort of thing. Audio is starting to get a bit more recognition as opposed to just kind of the film side of things. But there's just there is a lot of good work being done, and I think what I'm about, or what I kind of try and talk about, is just bringing it to people. Sharing stuff, sharing still cool stuff that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Before we started this recording, like taking it back to the ad chat, the one set of ads that grabbed me in the last year was the Holy Veggie ads.
We want wings! Yeah, wings!
Your kids hate veggies, they'd rather starve than eat them! Holy Veggie! Your kids think they're smart, they're not as smart as you! Holy Veggie! They don't have a clue, undeveloped brains! Holy Veggie! Yes, it's a lie, but lying is okay! Parents do that! Tell them what you did, you got them to eat vegetables! Salad, drama! You betray their trust, but eating plants is worth it! They'll resent you, holy veggie!
You just ate vegetables.
Like, they are a full metal track comedy, absolutely hilarious, but they're made so well, paired up with the visuals incredibly. And then right at the end, this little ditty of, haha, you just ate vegetables. And it's like, I'm going to go back and watch that again because it was so good. And yeah, like they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it.
And I was listening to an interview a few months ago with the director Alejandro Inarritu, did The Revenant, Birdman, Babel, 21 Grams. And he like unbidden, and nobody asked for this. He went off on the fact that he starts with sound. When he makes his movies, the first thing he considers is sound. And he tries to come up with images that accompany that stuff. And if you remember the soundtrack to Birdman in 2014, it's just like sizzling drums. And like it's just like this raw thing. And in The Revenant, like the whiny kind of high and tight things that just really accentuate the tension and sort of the majesty of what you're seeing on the screen. It's one of those things where I was like, man, this dude's movies are very affecting. And when I heard him talk about it, the first thing he considers is sound. So he works with a composer to come up with things, and then that inspires him on how he's grabbing shots, which I was like, bro, that's completely different than anyone that's approaching this stuff, because I've worked on soundtracks for documentaries and feature films and stuff, and it is the last thing. They don't have any more money. And they're
Yeah.
like, can you give us
That's
cheap genius is what we're looking for. And you're like, okay, but
make it not quiet, sound boy.
right. But the Holy Veggies thing makes it seem like they were inspired by a feel that was sonic. And then they made these ads to accompany it. And it just feels like the marriage is there. And I think maybe one of the things that marketers are struggling with is that it's this last thing. They're thinking about the typography, the looks, the visuals, even on, YouTube creators and stuff, it's just one of those things. Like the edits are nice, they're in Adobe Premiere, but they're not doing that work to figure out how to really bring in people. And maybe I guess I'm just bringing that as an example of somebody who's making really, really good stuff. And the only reason why it really is deeply affecting is because sound is the first thing that creator considers. And it's just kind of mind-boggling that people don't, consider the deep impressions that sound can make.
It doesn't shock me. I mean, most people went out there and went, oh, I'm going to make cool videos. And that's awesome. Like, go out, create, find new stuff, make new stuff. But then the whole kind of the ease of access to library music, through subscription platforms, you don't have to worry about going out and finding a piece of music which you've then got to negotiate the license for and
Right.
blah blah blah. It's just like,
Yeah.
I pay my $30 a month and I tap into my platform and I can find exactly what I need and I just dump that in, and that's easy. And you can immediately add some kind of emotion and a link, or an audio link, but that thing has not been created for your film. And it's horses for courses, of course. Like, library music totally has its place and it works wonderfully in so many settings across professional TV, and everything else. But where I'm starting to find like my real forte is in the sound design side of things. So like that sonic branding thing of, trying to, building that little piece of that little mnemonic, that little piece of iconography that works for a brand. But then, if somebody's creating a video, if somebody's creating a piece of media, like stripping the music away, like take the music off and go, how can I add more texture to this? How can I make this feel more real? How can I get this to connect with the person that's watching, the listener, better over just what somebody said to me? It was like, if somebody brings me one more Lumineers clap and stomp track, like, I'll scream.
Well,
Another whispering version of Wonderwall or whatever.
Right?
Like, you can't argue that those things work, but let's just do something. Let's do something different and do something really, really well that disrupts all of that. Like, I would like some of the best ads. There was a really cool ad recently for a Mexican food brand where they went all in on the sound design. The sizzling pan, everything as the camera shots panned around this dinner table sounded fantastic. That was one that did really, really well. The behemoth that is Coca-Cola have just released an ad as well, which is in an art gallery.
No, yes, love that.
Yeah, like that's an awesome ad, visually absolutely stunning. But again, take a step back and re-listen to that, and it is pristine. Like whoever did the sound design agency that worked on that, like, nailed it. They did such a good job, and it just added this extra layer to to connect with people, because it's that thing of like sounds and feelings that you don't even know that you're hearing or feeling, and then they connect with the visuals, and then later on you reconnect with stuff, or you hear something and you go, oh, remember this, and you don't even know why you remember it. Like, that's the power of audio to me.
I think, I was thinking the ones that I always think of a really good kind of mesh between the sonic and the visual. I like Apple's ads. I think they do a great job. Like,
They do.
And they're, I mean, they win awards for it. I'm not, I'm not saying anything that people don't know.
Well, I mean, have you seen the one where the guy's sitting in his garage and he literally creates a song with all of the audio assets from Apple products over the years? Like, that was a genius idea and worked so well.
that is a genius segue to this next question that I wanted to ask you.
It was
which is
totally intended.
Planned.
Yeah, we planned this. I know I have a lot of things that I fall back on when I have to, create a visual ad or make a brief or something like that. Do you have any like tricks or any starting points or anything like that? Any engineering techniques that you kind of lean on that maybe people could use as a starting point to make better sounding stuff?
Yeah, sure. Don't be afraid of samples. Like
Hmm.
I have a sample bank which is honestly just ludicrously ridiculously big, and I'll get stuck on stuff all the time, or I'll go out hunting for something that, like, in sound, half the battle is trying to get over what sound you want something to be. And there's usually the only way to describe it is kind of with some onomatopoeic word, whether it's a whoosh, it's whoosh, splat, like
Mhm.
going out and then trying to just find the things that link back. So, like, if you're going to go out and say, do sound design for something or create an advert, like, number one, keep it really simple because it's dead easy to over engineer something
Yeah.
very fast.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sat here, I only have 4 tracks. I feel like it should be more complicated than this. No, it shouldn't. If it sounds good, it is good. Like, that's certainly the first thing. And then, yeah, like, use samples. Like, use samples to spur, new ideas, to go out, find something that you hadn't thought of. And then go away and maybe try and recreate stuff or manipulate it or play with it or stick it into, an actual sampler and then turn it into an instrument. Like, the third thing, I guess, then is, like, it's something that I do is always trying to come back and make something musical. I've done you mentioned like the kind of some of the sound design bits and pieces that I've done recently that were purely just for kind of sharpening my skills and to kind of share them out there. Was whenever I've created something, I've tried to create some sort of musical link rather than it just being like whooshes and buzzes and washed out reverbs and all of the spacey stuff. Like, how can I make it musical again? And then trying to get something that is my sound. Like, when I do something, I do it like this, so that you always have, like, almost your little sonic signature that you put into whatever work that you do.
Man, and there's something, once again, is that musicians, practitioners of these things, we've had countless gigs where, songs just like totally shit the bed, and like, things just go completely awry on stage and you still have to finish the song. And I think there's something that a musician can grab onto the thread better than a creator that's maybe just getting started with this. I'm just kind of like the fact that you were like, if I'm just doing sound design, I'm still going to be listening in a musical capacity. And that's one thing that I find when I'm editing even podcasts, just audio, I listen to the melodies of people engaging. And one of the things that I've realized is space, silence is another instrument. And
Yeah, absolutely.
if you can use it, you create this place where people can kind of cleanse their palate and say, I'm ready for something more. But I think musicality, when applied to any of the facets of, creative marketing, can be, it just really lends itself for you to be creating a composition rather than just content. Do you agree? Do you want to riff on that?
I do agree. Like, it just, that thing of, you just said, like, always finishing the song even when
Right.
stuff goes wrong.
Right.
You hear it, like, audio production Twitter is a fun place. A one, like, tip that comes out quite a lot is, if you've started something, if you created a 1632 bar loop, if you've put something together, finish it, turn it into something. It doesn't matter whether it ever sees the light of day. It doesn't matter whether it's an absolute steaming pile of crap. Like, finish it, because you'll always learn something from it. You're always looking and go, that was good, or that was all hideous and I'll never do that again. Or like when I go back and I look at the stuff that I was so excited about when I was first putting like some of the music that I'd put out there, some of the bits and pieces that I did, when people have been really kind, you know, I'd said, hey, you're making a podcast, like, can I make the theme? And they went, yeah, go on then. And I made it, and I go back and listen to it now and go, holy crap, that should never have, oh god, they should never have let me do that. That was awful. But it's, you know, it's like everything, like everything is an evolution on what you've done before. Like, just sit with it, accept that it's been gone, done, smile at it and go, oh god, that was awful, but it's fine because I'm better now. And that's great.
I'm thinking about funk too. Like I love funk music, you know, and just like in the 70s, like that Herbie Hancock stuff, like, you know, like when jazz started pivoting into the popular world, they no longer could just kind of noodle on their things, and nobody did it better than Herbie Hancock. I mean, you know, George Duke too is a great example. Just some keyboard players that just like nailed it. And you're not going to be funkier than them. You know, like, and be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like I remember just being like, oh, I want to be groundbreaking. It's like, just show up. You know, like if you can just show up, have fun, people react to that. And I think what you're saying about your earlier stuff is also have the graciousness and humility to look back on your thing and say, that's cute. But don't besmirch your honor, because you were doing what you wanted. And if the client likes it, hey, I'm cool. You know, if the audience likes it, hey, we're cool. I know this isn't groundbreaking stuff, but there's a reason why forms come back. There's a reason why there's that, you know, dependability of formulaic structure, that people are like, oh, this is a blues song. I know I'm not going to be playing blues like B.B. King, you know, but I'm going to do what I have to do to get this song to you. You're going to take from it what you will, and I can release myself, you know, from destroying my ego. And that's another thing that musicians are great at, because boy, we played some great shows, and boy, we played some bad ones, you know?
I think I'm very much kind of like, do the best you can with the skills that you've got, with the equipment that you have and the budget that you have. Like, if you just marry those three up and do the best you can with all of that, you're going to get better. Just keep putting the effort in to get better, and just watch a lot of YouTube videos.
It's just that simple, isn't it?
And appreciate the happy accidents, because honestly, the amount of, like, I did something recently for some sound design stuff, and I moved one slider thinking I was doing something else. It didn't do what I want it to do, but holy crap, did it make an entirely different change that I was like, yeah, that's staying. That's staying, lock that down. I didn't mean to do it, or maybe I did. I'm not going to tell anybody that I didn't mean to do it, but I definitely didn't mean to. And that happens all the time. Stuff lines up, stuff happens, stuff, you know, just things just kind of come out and you go, oh, that's cool. Right.
It happens. It happens all the time in hip hop too, samples and stuff. And like, if I move, like things are starting on the one, if I move it up an eighth note and things just start interoperating with each other, you've created like a new level of stuff, and just being a bit more fluid and not so quantized, you know. And now we're into the digital audio workstation gossip, but you bring up a great point, happy accidents, you know, and having a bunch of samples and materials on hand to create that. That's the only way that's going to work. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, I mean, you brought up the holy veggies. You like that. You brought up, you know, a couple examples in gaming, and, you know, do you have any examples, other ones that you want to share of a great sounding ad? But then more importantly, are there examples of sound just like going horrible, like ads that just didn't get the sound right? Do you have any kind of stories that you'd like to share?
It's funny. I could, like, and I'm not even trying to dodge it on the bad stuff, but nothing comes to mind like immediately. Good stuff. When I think about the good stuff, like what's the stuff that I still sing now that I remember from 20 years ago?
Mm.
Jake, I remember ages ago you were talking about jingles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd said, yeah, the Umbongo ad.
Yeah.
And if you speak to any 30-something British person and say, sing me the Umbongo theme tune, they probably will be able to recite it for you, like front to back.
Way down deep in the middle of the Congo, a hippo took an every caught the rubber and the mango. He stuck it with the others and he danced a diddy tango. The rhino said, I know, we'll call it Umbongo. Umbongo, the drink it in the Congo. Python picked the passion fruit, the mama said the mandarin. The parrot painted pockets, got the hunk of voodoo land it is. So when it comes to sun and fun and goodness in the jungle, they all prefer the sunny, funny one they call Umbongo.
Libby's Umbongo. High juice drinks. Free from artificial ingredients.
The ad was bright and it was animated and the song was ridiculous, you know, and Umbongo, they drink it in the Congo. Like, what the fuck? Just, you know, it was a crazy tropical juice drink that was delicious and we all loved it. But I still remember that. I still remember like ridiculous like local radio ads from when I was a kid. And it's probably just through repetition and frequency of hearing them, but it was the same message.
Yeah.
There was I used to live in Yorkshire. There was a car garage called Karelia Cars. And the character, the guy was Big John from Karelia Cars, Driffield Road, Market Wheaton. And like that's still, I can hear it in my head. I can recite his words. I heard that ad 100 times a week in the car with my parents listening to Minster FM. Like, I think what people get scared about quite often is that we need to do something new, we need to make a change, you know, let's freshen it up. No, just actually if that's still working for people, if people are still hearing that and they're remembering you, that's working. Stop changing stuff because you don't need to.
And can we speak just amongst ourselves of clients feeling like and anyone else who's listening? I guess
everybody, like, okay, everyone, just
okay.
This is just between us.
Y'all
okay?
just take. You knew what I was saying. So no, among the creators, composers, the people here at Audio Content Lab. Like clients being afraid that a jingle will make them seem cheesy or corny. Like, can we,
absolutely.
Can we rap about that? Like, cause you're saying like this car garage, I would assume they want to be trusted mechanics that can deliver things on time, but they decided to get big, whatever, and have a jingle, you know, like what's your, you know, retort for people saying, I don't want to be corny?
I love a jingle. Like people still sing the Dr. Pepper song. You know, what's the worst that can happen? At some point in the early noughties, we decided we were cool and we need to stop being cool. We need to start being memorable again. Like, let's go back to doing things that grabbed attention. Like you guys have shared with me plenty of jingles that I've never heard from America, but are mainstays that people can remember from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Like, why aren't we looking at that and going, well, it worked for like 30 years, but we're not doing it now? That doesn't make any sense to me.
And I think you brought up a really good point. And the reason why we started hanging out was there's a gap here. There just is. I mean, people.
What's wrong with having a bit of fun?
And
like people just, there's an element of just taking ourselves just a bit too seriously.
Yeah, for real. You're in sales. You're in marketing. Like, no one's going to die. Paul used to say this a lot. No one's going to die if we get this wrong.
This is true.
Well, you know, listen to you guys. It's kind of funny. I think there's something we're kind of missing too a bit. Well, not we, but people in general miss, is that jingles themselves are kind of a standard. You know what I mean? Like you have your jazz standards and stuff. There's a bit of a format. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here is that the stuff that's memorable follows that. And we're getting away from that by trying to be cool. But there's a reason it worked. There's a reason it was memorable, is that it had that stickiness, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if there's people who don't want people who are going to make the mistake of not contacting us and they're going to go out and do it on their own, what is the one piece of advice that you would say to someone who wanted to make a great sounding ad or a great sounding sonic logo? What would you tell them?
Oh, they're two very different things. Like a great
Okay,
sounding ad.
let's go ad. Let's say if you want to,
Let's go
make a
ad.
great sounding ad.
Take one message and stick with it. Like you've got 30 seconds, 15 seconds, however long your spot is. You don't have long, and you have no visual to tell an extra story. So you've got to keep that message simple. But you've got to make sure that whatever you do make is creatively awesome. I don't want to hear something that's boring. Like, it's not even that people, it's even worse that people won't even turn you off. Like, people hate Geo Campo, whatever the Go Compare guy is called. Go Compare. Like,
Mhm.
so many people hate that man and hate that character. But there's a reason why he stayed around for however long now, like 15 years. Now, I would much rather know that people were turning my ad off because it was so freaking annoying than just zoning out because it was so damn boring.
Woo!
God, that was Jake. That's Mr. Whipple, right?
Oh,
I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah, Luke Sullivan. Yeah.
People hated him for Charmin toilet paper. And he sold like from the 70s until like what? It was like the mid 80s. Like
The
he
early
sold
90s.
millions.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
They kept him around forever and they received hate mail and stuff. And I'm like, I hate Mr. Whipple, but you remember him. And I think a lot of marketers are like, "Ooh, I don't want to ride that line." A lot of stakeholders are like, "Ooh, they're going to hate us." Maybe not. But then y'all are just doing this khaki generic, I didn't even see your thing, or you're doing some direct response, 30% off, use this coupon code. Wow.
Mhm.
I remember that banner ad, said no one. I mean,
Ever.
Jesus.
Yeah. That discount, man.
Oh, man, there was a
Holy
great,
cow.
I got such a cool coupon email from my local.
Stuck.
Like, shut up. Yo, that is so beautiful. I am so grateful that we get to share time and space with you, Ant. If people want to learn more about you, connect with you online, how can they do that?
They can hear me witter on Twitter at Ant P Henderson. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. So like my sound design and music stuff you'll find at On The Hook Music. And then you can find me chatting with you, lovely pair, via Audio Content Lab.
Time for a sound quiz.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is your favorite sound in the world?
Do you know what? The sound of my kid laughing.
Oh.
She's like, when you get a genuine laugh out of her from being a baby to now, like nothing touches that. It's awesome, especially when you're the one that's made the laugh as well.
Sweet Bella. And then what is your least favorite sound?
Oh, people that whisper on adverts.
You should have mentioned that. You should have mentioned that.
No.
Is there a reason they're doing that? Why are they doing that? I
don't know. Texturally, I'm sure it works in some way, but it's like claws down a chalkboard for me. It just makes my eye twitch, and I hate it. Usually because that person's then whispering, and then they've got a slightly dry mouth, and they probably should have had a swig of a bottle of water 10 minutes ago. And it's like, stop it. It's horrible.
I love these questions, Paul, because it gets so specific with the answers. You're like, wow, okay.
I love it. And the added bonus is we know how to piss off all our guests after we're done.
Yeah, I think that's
all right. So speaking of pissing off our guests, here's the patented sound quiz. We are going to play you 3 sounds one at a time, and it is up to you to guess. Here we go.
Okay.
Sound number 1.
Oh.
Do you know what I was going to say? Is that bacon sizzling?
I thought that was hilarious now that we had the conversation. No, it is not bacon. I tried to get super technical on this one, so I will give you it. It is the other option that you suggested there, but it's specific.
Can I have it again? Can I have it again?
Maybe.
Please.
I'll
Please.
try.
Or maybe press the button twice.
There we go.
It's something being poured.
At the end.
Yes. Go on.
I mean, it kind of feels like water being poured into a hot pan or something like that. But
I'm gonna give you partial credit for that one. That is tap water running into a stone sink.
There you go.
So hard, Paul.
I know. It'd be nice all the time, all right?
I know. All I was thinking was, this is my brain on drugs. That's what I was thinking. Okay.
I just thought it was hilarious because it was going like into a stone sink.
Everyone knows what that is.
Next one. Of course. I mean, they do now.
Is that a ruler? Like a ruler that's been twanged on the edge of a table?
Oh man. No, but I wish I would have had that sound. No, that was dice.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. According to the sound thing. Okay. Last one. Here we go.
Have you been getting your Foley on, Paul? Sorry, when you played that first, I thought it was literally just was the sound. And
right, me
about
too.
To really hate you. Somebody that sounded like that was somebody walking through leaves.
Yes, that was footsteps through grass, but I think we're gonna count it.
Okay,
that works.
Crunchy grass.
Sounds Like Marketing is a production of Audio Content Lab. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you find your podcasts, and follow Audio Content Lab for the latest in sound marketing advice. Until next time.